you're going to be thinking that you're making all these strides that you're not. And then when you look back on your journey, maybe next January, right? You might be frustrated to feel like you didn't grow and you didn't become the best version of yourself. But you also might be more frustrated that you don't know why, even though you think you did everything you possibly could.
5 shows made 3 million a week. You are now looking at the bestie elite. You are now looking at the bestie elite. You are now looking at the best.
Welcome back, besties. I'm Lola Shell, and together we're becoming the best, aka our best selves, this year and every year. The best are never the best by themselves, and you shouldn't be either. If you haven't already, join the best here on YouTube by hitting that subscribe button, and add your bestie by liking and sharing this with someone you want the best for. Now, grab your water and let's go. I'm so excited because today we're learning how to fall in love with your best self in 2025 in only 8 steps. Yes, you heard that right, 8 steps, okay? So if really actually connecting to the best version of yourself and making it something that you actually love versus it being a chore is something you've been trying to do for a while now, especially if it's been a New Year's resolution. This video was really made for you because I want your best self to not just be something that's aspirational or something that you will do, but a process that you're going to love every step of the way. And without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing you're going to do to learn how to fall in love with your best self in 2025 is to write down who your best self is. Remember, you need to be specific, okay? You cannot fall in love with somebody that you don't know. And you are no exception, okay? Even though you're with yourself 24/7, a lot of times you don't take the time to actually sit down and think to yourself, who really am I? Who do I want to be? What are things I love about myself? What are things I would want to change and improve? If you never have that dialogue, if you never sit down and write it down with real paper and real pen, you will have this idea of yourself in your head that you think you're executing on, but without anything written or anything visual that you can see or reflect back on or compare it to, you're going to be thinking that you're making all these strides that you're not. And then when you look back on your journey, maybe next January, right? You might be frustrated to feel like you didn't grow and you didn't become the best version of yourself. But you also might be more frustrated that you don't know why, even though you think you did everything you possibly could. It's because if you skip this step, if you decide that I'm going to be my best self and I'm going to love this whole process without doing this first step, the process is going to be longer than it needs to be, and it's not going to give you nearly as much back as it could. Just saying. So once you've written down what your best version of yourself is going to be, you need to highlight the gaps between the you that you are right now and the you that you're trying to be, okay? I understand that this might be a little uncomfortable, especially when you start seeing that it might be a lot of things that are different between the person that you are right now and where you're trying to go. But the beautiful thing about it is that it's going to be a journey regardless. Even when you get to that better version, best version of yourself, you are then going to have another goalpost to hit from that point. You know what I'm saying? So this is going to be something that you're always going to be working on. So don't let the current project, the current process be something that makes you freak out or, is too daunting or intimidates you. Think of this as an amazing journey to a destination that you're going to love. And don't just think of the destination, think of the journey itself. Okay, so for every single gap that you find, every single skill, every single maybe element of the better you, that could be like, the emotions, how they talk, how they walk, what they wear. That could be the hobbies that they have. That could be the, again, the skills that they've accomplished or learned, whatever these gaps are. If they are something that's in your physical life, spiritual life, emotional life, wherever the gaps are, when you're writing them down, don't just look at them as like, this is another thing I have to do. Think of it as an amazing adventure you get to go on while becoming the better version of yourself. And honestly, ultimately, the best version of yourself that you're going to love. Okay? Is that making sense? Let me know. If it is, put a thumbs up. If not, if you feel like I'm rambling, let me know. Okay? I'll be more succinct in the next video. Now, for my besties who get overwhelmed easily, I got you. I hear you from beyond. Okay? Of all of those gaps that you guys have written down, right? Take the top 3 gaps and make it your goal to close those gaps. So even if from the current version of you to your best self, there's 25 gaps, right? You don't have this skill, you don't have that habit, you don't have, this thing that you don't have that thing that you do, you don't walk like this, you don't talk, whatever is on that list, right? Of all those 25 plus things, pick 3. It could be one thing that's spiritual, one thing that's emotional or mental, another thing that's physical. Pick 3, okay? And then focus your energy on closing the gap between where you are on that gap and where your best self is. So for example, if one of the gaps was, the future you knows Spanish, right? The best version of you knows Spanish and loves Spanish, right? But the current version of you is not that good at it. Well, then guess what? That can be the gap that you close. That is now a skill that you're going to learn. That's something that you can dedicate the time and energy and resource to, is learning that skill so that you are that much closer to the best version of yourself. You see what I'm saying? Even if you didn't get all 25, picking that one element, picking that one gap gives you something to focus on. And just to make sure that you guys got it, I do want you guys to drop one gap that you guys found in the comments below so that 1, if you need help closing the gap, we can give you suggestions. And 2, if you're already working on closing the gap, you can tell us how you're doing it. Love getting inspiration. Just so you know, on this journey to learning how to fall in love with the best version of yourself in 2025 and beyond, it does not involve you just like totally, hating the version of yourself that you are right now. Do you understand? In fact, on this journey, I do want you to do this next step, which is to write down your best habits. This way you can really see what you're actually doing well. A lot of times we get so focused on where we're trying to go. We get so focused on the best version of ourselves. We get so focused on, just that end result that we forget all the things that we love about ourselves now, all the things that our best self is actually built off of, because it's our best qualities. For me, it could be, I love communicating. I love talking. I love, connecting with people, right? The best version of myself is an expert at that, right? In fact, she's going to be an expert at that in multiple languages. Get into it. But that's something that's only possible because I already have taken inventory of my best qualities, okay? And by doing that, I also know what I can use to close the gaps between my current self and my best self. And when you take inventory of your best qualities and what you do really, really well, you're going to realize how many tools you already have that are going to make your best self that much more possible. Now, with all good habits, right, there are bad habits. I know we don't like to admit it, but it's a real thing. And just like I wanted you to write down your best habits, I also want you to write down your bad habits and then find one thing you can do each day to get rid of them, right? So for me, one of my worst habits was I was notorious for sleeping in. Oh my gosh, I could sleep in till 12, 1, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. It didn't matter what time I went to sleep. I think I just do a lot in life, so I have no problem just like sleeping extremely late. But to become the best version of myself, I had to get up early. I had to use the time before everybody else got up to really pour into myself. So I had to get rid of sleeping late. But I didn't just jump from waking up at 2 p.m. to waking up at 5 a.m. I went from 2 p.m. to 9 a.m. I could wake up at 9 a.m. And then from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then from 7 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 5:45, 5:45 to 5:30, 5:30 to 5 a.m. And now I'm here, okay? But I couldn't get here if I did not take note of the bad habit to begin with, and then not just quit it cold turkey, but to stair-step my way away from it and towards the good habits that I wanted to replace it with. Make sense? Okay, now once you're done writing both your good habits and bad habits, the next thing you want to write down is the habits you need for your goals. Then find one thing you can do each day to move the needle on them. So you know how I told you, hey, find your gaps between your current self and the best self that you're going to love, as well as the journey itself, right? Then I told you to choose 3 of those gaps and make those your goals to lessen the gap between your current self and the best version of yourself, right? So You've now taken inventory of your good habits that are going to be your tools you're going to use to get there from your current self to your best self. And you also took note of your bad habits, which is slowing down your progress from where you are to where you want to be. The other missing link is the habits in general that you need. Now, there might be some habits that you did not know that you needed to have in order to accomplish, closing the gap. So for me, going back to like learning Spanish, I might not have realized that a habit that I needed was setting aside 30 minutes a day to heavily practice just Spanish, right? I might have originally thought like, oh yeah, I can just learn it for conversation and I'll be great. But it's not until I actually attempt it that I realized like, oh snap, actually, I need to treat this more like a class. I need to actually sit down for 30 minutes a day and really practice not only saying it, but writing it and reading it. You know what I'm saying? So those might be skills that I need and habits that I need to, form to get the skills, but I wouldn't know that if I don't sit down and write it down, right? So for you, it could be, oh, you want to be a certain weight. Well, you might know that you need to go to the gym, but you might not realize another habit you need is to not eat after 8:00 p.m. Who'da knew, right? Like, who'da thunk? But it's not until you sit down and actually take inventory of what you're trying to do, the gap, why it exists, and what you actually need, what tools you need outside of the tools you already have and the tools you shouldn't be using, like the bad habits, that you're going to realize the gap in the gap. So the gap between the tools that you have that are closing the gap and the tools that you need to finish closing the gap. I know it's a lot of gap, but if you get me, you get me. I want you to lean in and I want to hold your hand while I say this. Remember, you are chasing excellence, not perfection. I have said this in several videos. We need to get out of thinking about perfection and chase excellence, because excellence is doing the best with what you have access to. Perfection is a lie, okay? Nothing will ever be perfect. Something could always be better. But being excellent is something you have the right to achieve. When you're becoming your best self and you are producing a version of yourself that you love and a process to becoming the version of yourself that you love, right? You need to do it with excellence. Do not let perfection cause you to procrastinate on this, because you will see yourself trying to go after perfection, trying to do everything the perfect way, and then be frustrated when it's not perfect, instead of realizing it doesn't need to be perfect to be effective. It just needs to be excellent, okay? If you do everything in excellence, you have nothing to regret. You have nothing holding you back, because you are doing the best of your abilities with what you have. And nobody can ever look down on you for that, ever, okay? So remember, you're chasing excellence, not perfection. So the last thing you're going to do to learn how to fall in love with your best self in 2025 and beyond is you're going to start today. It should come as no surprise after doing the work of writing down who your best self is going to be, highlighting the gaps, taking the 3 gaps that are, the ones that make the most sense for you and making those your goals to close those gaps, and writing down your best habits to see what tools you have, and then writing down your worst habits to see what's keeping you from being your best self, and then writing down the habits that you need to bridge the gap within the gap. I know, gap. And then, again, all these things, this is all things that you're doing, right? And then on top of that, reminding yourself about excellence versus perfection. At this point, it's just time to get started. You've done all the work, okay? You don't need to do everything, right? You don't need to do everything right now, but you need to do something. So if you don't have the time to, go through every single thing that I talked about, start with the first thing. If you've got the first few things together, add one more thing that you could dive into or explore there. The point of this video is to really make sure that you're creating a version of yourself that you love, okay? And a version of yourself that you love to create. Because becoming your best self is just that. It's an action. It's becoming, okay? The best version of you will always evolve, but it will never see the light of day if you do not start today. Okay, if you continue to wait for the right environment, the right time, I get this job, I move to this city, I get this much taller, I lose this much weight, you will miss the point and miss your opportunity. Okay, I don't care if, this is a New Year's resolution from last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 50 years ago. They say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now, okay? Start today. Pick one thing that you're going to do. Drop it inside the comments so we can hold you accountable. If you need help, ask for it in the comments. Let us be a resource for you. But do not let another day go by without you creating the version of yourself that you love. That's all for today, besties. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and comment your best tip below. Remember, the best is yet to come. See you on the next one.